Good evening. Thank you for joining us at the JCC Chicago Jewish Film Festival for a discussion with screenwriter Stephen Glantz on the film Crescendo. Stephen,
Oh, so
welcome.
hi. So I can't see everybody.
No, we're on a webinar.
Oh, okay. So this is a webinar. Oh my
Yep.
gosh.
I
So I'm
know
like,
that I know you're used to teaching classes and looking
well,
at the
I'm used
camera.
to in most of these Q&As, it was a Zoom, so I could see who I was talking to. Okay, this is going to make it harder for me. Not too much. So
Oh,
how many people are out there?
about we had 25 people who had registered.
Oh, great. Okay.
Okay. So
I didn't know whether I had to use my outside or inside voice.
yeah, no, you're good. You're
Okay.
perfectly fine. We're delighted that you're joining us. You know, one of the things that has come out of this pandemic is that we have the capability of meeting the filmmakers
Yeah.
in a way that, no film festival would be able to do in normal
Right.
times. So we're happy to have you and
Thank
to
you.
learn from you. Um, you have an illustrious career. And you've done such interesting things. You know, you've written books, you've written for television and for film. And so I'm going to get started and ask you what I'm interested in asking you.
Okay.
But please, for the audience, please put your questions into the chat, and I will ask Stephen.
Okay.
So Stephen, tell me something. Like, why this topic? Why this topic? What made you write on this topic?
Um, well, I don't know, since the year 2000, I've worked with a German film company a lot, the CC3 Filmkunst. And the principal he died last year at 102. And he made the first Holocaust film in 1946. And he's done 22 films. He's Jewish, and he's made over 250 movies, and so many of his films were Jewish themed. And I guess in like 2011, I was in Germany, and he said, I had this idea for many, many years, and I want to do a movie about a conductor who gets together an orchestra of Palestinian kids and Israeli kids. So that's where the idea started. But I think one of the reasons why he sort of took it out of his vault, is that Daniel Barenboim had this West East Divan Orchestra, which was really, real
Mhm.
people, and we didn't want to do Barenboim's story because it would be about him, and somebody was doing a documentary about it. But we felt that there was a lot to say about, trying to get both sides working together, and that's how it started.
And like, why you've done a lot of films about World War II. One of your films had to do with racism in the South. What about how you were brought up, or your past? What
Yeah,
is
I
it
mean,
that
that's an interesting
inspires you?
question. I mean, I grew up in the 60s. My dad owned a furniture store, and I mean, it was in we he sold for like a used furniture store, so we had a lot of clients who weren't wealthy. And in Rhode Island, in Providence, where I grew up, there's a Black population and an Irish population and an Italian population. I mean, it was really pretty diverse. And one of the guys that I worked with was a guy from Tennessee named Slim, and we just lugged furniture around all day. And Slim was a great storyteller. Um, and he would tell me about like his life in the South. And he never felt like he expressed himself as a victim, but just, he was like a Faulkner character. And also in the 60s with the civil rights movement. And I mean, as a sort of somebody who wanted to be a writer, I think, was really affected by being Jewish, and also profoundly affected by, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and James Baldwin and Ralph Ellison and Richard Wright and all those writers. And I think I wanted to, and I love sort of the transformational aspect of, telling a story on film. And it's just sort of my career path.
So I read that you wrote the original script for this movie in 2012, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And that the script kind of morphed. So it went from something that was more political to something that was more about the people.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's like when you're writing scripts, it's like like I always tell my writing students, it's a lot better to be really pissed off about something when you sit down to write. Um, and there, in doing the research, there was this kind of document that I got obsessed with, and it was all the sort of the protocols for how the Israeli and the Palestinians were going to work together, and how they were going to get the Palestinians, through all the border crossings and all the security that they would need to have. And this was based on what the Barenboim's orchestra had to do. And it was just mind-boggling that it was so complex. It was like hundreds of pages. And I spent a lot of I don't know, I had that was a whole subplot. And one of the great things that Dror did was he kind of simplified, and I don't mean, make it less complex or sophisticated, but was able to distill, that's a better word, the storyline and focus it on the musicians themselves.
I mean, it ended up, it was incredible, an incredibly powerful film. One of the comments that we have right now, um, Hillary Morrison is saying that she loved the film, and she said her nephew plays the trombone in a symphony, and auditioned for years, and she loved that part. Um, but she says none of the Jewish characters were likable, in her opinion. Was that a device?
I don't think so. No. I mean, I think if she saw the film again, there are a couple of characters, Jewish characters, that were kind of fun. But I think one of the things that happened was that in earlier drafts, we saw Ron's family and understood more why he was so adamant, against the Palestinians. And so not contemptuous, but so, infuriated by their presence. And for some reason, that was taken out. I don't know if they filmed it or, and they cut it, or they just cut it from the script. So, and one of the other things that the director Dror is very liberal, progressive, sort of left leaning. And he felt that in Western audiences and European and American audiences, we see more of the Israeli point of view and we see less of the Palestinian point of view. And, like if you have like 90 or 100, 110 minutes to tell a story, I think he wanted to err on the side of telling more of the Palestinian story, because we don't see it as much. I mean, they're sort of demonized more in our culture. And I think he, is someone who's Israeli and just feels lousy about it.
Yeah, I mean, I could understand that. It's it's a it's a heated topic. Let's face it, it's a heated topic. There's always heat in Israel around it and in America. And it's sensitive. We know that even in showing film, when we think about
Yeah.
what we're showing, we have to consider that.
One of the things that when Mr. Browner, I mean, he was like a father, second father to me. I mean, one of the things we talked about in relation to this film is that we didn't think we'd be doing our job unless we pissed everybody off, like pissed off the Israelis and pissed off the Palestinians. Because I think part of the theme of the film is that there are a lot of people who are more committed to the status quo and keeping things the way they are rather than, like some kind of transformation.
Was it hard to get funding? Was it hard to get the film funded?
It's it's always hard to get movies funded. Um, but there is a really interesting story. The like in Germany, most of the funding comes from various government agencies, depending where you shoot the movie. So some of the movie was, from various German film funds, and then like, I don't know, we were already in pre-production, and we lost some of our funding. And Elise Browner, who's the producer and the daughter of Arthur Browner, and really, really incredibly talented producer and an amazing person, was at a film festival, and she had just gotten off the phone when she got the bad news that, some of the funding dropped out. And I think she was crying or really upset. And this guy came up to her and said, "What's wrong?" And she told him the story and the story of the movie. And well, he said, "I think I can take care of that." And he was like the head of Red Bull. And
How fortuitous.
it was totally amazingly fortuitous.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really, I mean, there's always a story to getting these films made. Like, I mean, the movie in the mountains, they were like in the script, they were in Austria, but we actually filmed it in the Alps because that part of the Alps had its own tourist bureau, and it had, film funds to bring productions there to shoot there.
Interesting. So when you write a screenplay, because this is, like this is something that I don't know much about, and I would be willing to say probably most of us who love movies don't really know a lot about the behind the scenes of a movie. When you write the screenplay, are you on the set? Do you have a say in who plays the
No,
part?
no. Usually, I mean, it depends. First of all, it depends on the director. Um, like Dror had his own writer, and like I don't speak Hebrew, and so I mean, he needed sort of his own person there. And I don't know if that writer was on the set or not. I've been on the set of a bunch of my movies. It depends. I mean, some directors, insist on having the writers there, and some directors are terrified that the writer will there because they'll hear an actor screwing up a line, and the writer will say, "No, no, no, that's not what I wrote." So, oh God, I upset my dog. Come here, buddy. So I mean, it depends. I mean, the idea is to have, um, the script really done before, and there are always changes on the set, just in the way that actors, just the way that, like, sometimes they need to rearrange words and take breaths and, sort of rephrase things, because I mean, once you start having actors say the lines, the script takes kind of like on a life of its own.
Right, because they bring themselves
Yeah,
to
yeah.
the
I mean,
line.
it's really collaborative, and it's like, I think, you know, when you have a good cast and the movie turns out well, it's really exciting for the writer, to say, oh my God, there's more to this than I thought. And I didn't see this in the movie. And, that line was really great. And I didn't think that line was so great when I wrote it, but it was really great. The way it was acted. So if I'm not on the set and if I'm not sort of actively involved in the production, I don't like to see the movie until it's finished and I'm in a theater seeing it for the first time with an audience. That's what I really, it's what I like.
I could understand that.
Mm.
So let me ask you, one of the viewers asked about the scene where the young man is killed.
Mm.
And she was very grateful that there wasn't just gratuitous, killing and violence on the film, but she wondered about how he died. And so it's unclear whether it was the terrorists or whether it was just, somebody driving a car and
Well,
didn't.
after spending like years and years on the script, we could never quite figure out who or why the violence happened. Like we knew something, like somebody had to die, and we had very many different people dying in many numbers over the course. I mean, it's a very strange thing being a writer and having to envision the deaths of people, especially in a movie like this. It's not
Mhm.
it's not so much fun. And I think at the end of the day, Dror and Elise felt like we don't need to answer that question. He goes off, and he's run over, and is he meant to be run over, or was it an accident, or it was those, I don't know if we would even want to say that they were, use the word terrorists, because we don't even know who that group was that attacked them when they were on bicycles. When you name like a group of people in a movie, whether they're Jewish, whether they're Palestinian, or whatever they are, you sort of politicize it more than you intend to, because people will say, well, you're going after that group, and why are you making them the killers?
Mhm.
So we just felt it was best to, it's like, we don't know, like something violence was going to happen, something was going to happen in this movie to somebody, because that's sort of the nature of these kinds of situations. And so I apologize if you're the woman who asked the question is satisfied or not satisfied with the answer, but so we don't know.
Right.
Is the answer. We couldn't think of it, so that's what we did.
But he was probably the most likable of all the musicians. He was
Yeah.
the one, I felt like, yes, we knew about the young woman, but we really knew the most about this kind young man who really had nothing but was so respectful of his father. And he was a good person. He was just a nice
Yeah,
person.
he was great to write. Um, and there's this novel by Herman Melville called Billy Budd. I don't know if anybody's read it, but it's about a young man who goes to sea, who's very, very innocent. And when bad things happen in the book, it's like he's the one that needs to be sacrificed because of some superstition. And it's always the innocent who sort of take the brunt of everything. And we really wanted the audience to be rooting for Shira and Omar.
Hmm.
Um,
And we were.
yeah, and we were.
And
Yeah.
we were. So when he's killed, there's like an oh my God moment, and
Well,
it,
I always, every time I see it, I want them, is this the version in which they get away? Maybe we should have shot that version.
Yeah, like, tonight it'll end this way and tomorrow it'll end that way. That
Yeah,
would be nice. That would be nice, I have to say, for this film. It would be interesting to know what would have happened had that not happened.
yeah.
Would the concert have happened? Like, you saw them, the the orchestra was just starting to come together
Hmm.
and get beyond the hate, to work together to
Hmm.
just play something
Yeah.
that they all felt passionate about. And so it would be interesting, would have been a different story, of course.
Well, it was, I mean, the shooting of the film was pretty interesting also, in that when the actors sort of got together for the first time, it was kind of just really hitting them what they were about to undertake. It's one thing to sort of get cast and read a script and you're excited. They go home, tell their families I got the part, kind of thing. And then when you sort of start rehearsing and reading, and saying the words out loud, I think it really brought up a lot of the individual feelings with the Palestinians, especially and the Israelis, because everybody has lost somebody or knows somebody who's lost somebody.
Mhm.
Um, and they did the same uh, prejudice reduction and conflict resolution exercises that were portrayed in the film. But
Really?
when they shot it, on the days that they shot it, it got so intense that they had to stop the shooting. And in one instance, one of the actresses actually just passed out. I mean, it was so intense shooting those scenes.
Were they were these actors and actresses who had to be taught how to look like they were playing, or were they
No,
actual musicians?
they're only in the orchestra. There were four professional actors. Layla, Ron, Omar, and Shira. I mean, Sabrina, Mahdi, Ayan, and Daniel. The rest of the orchestra were all musicians and who had never acted
Oh,
because
interesting.
we wanted they actually played some of the music. I think they added more, some of them were dubbed to give it a kind of a bigger sound,
Right.
but they were all musicians. They were all real players.
That that's really interesting. So yes, you want them, especially if they're not actors, trained, then you want to see that raw emotion, and you really
Well,
did.
yeah, I mean, I think it's a good idea. I mean, apart from wanting them to be able to play, like when you have, I mean, to put together an orchestra of like all actors to play like 20, 25 musicians, um, they wouldn't know. I mean, they might be able to learn to fake fingering and stuff like that, but they couldn't fake being a musician. I mean,
No
you know,
way.
that's sort of harder to do. And a lot of times, I mean, you can get great performances in certain situations out of people who aren't professional actors, and sometimes it's preferable to do that.
Well, I would, I was unclear because, in talking to filmmakers throughout the film festival, it's been interesting to see, like who, how people are cast, especially in a film that's all about music,
Mhm.
um, because the music has to be beautiful, and it's often clear when when they're not musicians and they're playing. Like, it's
Yeah, I mean, it's like a bad love scene. It's just like, oh my God, it's embarrassing a little bit.
right. I mean, so Susan said, when you finish writing, do you miss your characters?
Oh, um, I think the missing them comes later when you're done. You're so happy to be done, and you're sick of them. It's like they've been tormenting you, and you've been trying to get them right? I mean, it's a good question. It's hard to, um, no, I think when you're done, you're done. I mean, it's an exhausting kind of process.
Well, I would assume that writing is comes from passion, and passion is exhausting. If you have no, if you're not, if you haven't bought into it, if you're not putting all of yourself in, then maybe it's not.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think writing is a lot more like acting than sort of writing a novel, because you just kind of have to be, you're not so conscious of creating the language on the page as you are creating the emotion between the characters, which means that you have to sort of be, present to your own emotions. And that's the exhausting part of it.
So let me ask you something. Do you feel this was a hopeful film?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And are you hopeful about the piece?
Oh, like you can ask me 40 different times a day and I'll have a different answer, but I think overall, yeah, I am. And, I mean, I think if the Palestinian and Israelis get together, it could transform everything else, because if they can do it, then everybody else should be able to do it. I mean, I was really hopeful after the Irish in Ireland and Northern Ireland, they came to a peace. I thought, well, maybe we'd get the idea, but not quite. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm always hopeful.
Well, I mean, in the film, the conductor says, look, if, you know, he was the son of Nazis, and he, he lived, and he said, if Germans and Jews can talk, then there's hope. So one of our participants said that she felt it was hopeful in the end, because the young people, it showed the pointlessness of maintaining hatred for
Yeah,
generations.
sure. Yeah.
Um, and 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 also she felt that hopefulness came from the innocence of the young man who was killed, and he was so talented, like he
Well,
had his whole life ahead of him.
I mean, it was a wake up. I mean, we're in our heads about our beliefs a lot, especially about, it's not, I mean, it goes beyond politics, but if you have to believe in something, you have to believe in somebody like Omar. And it's like you're playing after he died, not like, if you don't play, then his death becomes really, really
Or
meaningless.
not,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that
So
was
you have to be hopeful because so many people have died. You just can't, you know, bury them and remove the gravestones from everybody who passed away.
So let me ask you something. What are you working on next? What's your next?
Oh wow.
Because I want to see it.
I just finished a novel. It's also set in World War II. It's about a Jewish Huckleberry Finn kind of character from Poland, and he's 15, and the war is sort of the best and the worst thing that's ever happened to him. I mean, he falls in love, and then, I mean, it's so I just hopefully that'll get sold in the next month or two. Um, I have a movie that was supposed to be shot this past summer. It's about a woman who owns an art house movie theater in Providence, Rhode Island, where I'm from, in the 50s. And it's sort of a McCarthy-esque, kind of Kennedy-esque, love of movies story. And her secret is that, she does abortions. And people think that she's a communist, but that's not what
Yeah.
And so there's that. And then I have another film, we're getting off the ground now. It's about a woman named Elizabeth Freeman, who was the first enslaved woman to sue for her freedom based on the new Constitution in 1781. And it's a true story. It's, I mean, she, you know, the story takes place like 10 minutes from here. She's sort of our local heroine, and not a lot of people know about her. And that's an amazing story. So we're turning that in. It was a script, and then people are looking at it and saying this needs to be a series. So we're expanding it to do it as a series.
So will it be something that maybe we'll be able to see on like an Amazon or
Yeah,
Netflix or?
yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's three different scripts that you're talking about. How
Well,
long does it take for you to write that?
um, God, the novel I've been working on and off for like 8 years. Smumbet on and off for like 5 years. Um, Rialto, the movie, uh, was I started working on it with the director. Her name is Lizzie Borden, and she did Born in Flames and Working Women. She's kind of a really arty cult director, and we actually started working on this movie in 2000.
2000, so 20 years, it's just been kind of,
Well, it's like you get close, and then things go up in smoke all the time. But now we're waiting to hear from Jessica Chastain, and we'll just see. Like it's like it all depends on casting, really. I mean, in American movies here.
is it hard? We've talked to a lot of filmmakers in Europe, and there doesn't seem to be much filmmaking going on in Europe because a lot of
No,
it is funded by government, and governments are paying now for COVID.
yeah. So, I mean, this is another thing. I'm just hopeful that when things open up, things will really open up. I mean, I'm very, hopeful about the vaccine and getting back to normal because writers are writing, and um, so I think there's going to be a explosion of stuff. People want to work. They really want to work.
Yeah, I think, frankly, I think the work helps to get through what we're going through.
Yeah.
I think, I think at first everybody was kind of stunned, and then it seems like when you watch television and you see what's going on in the arts world, it seems like for artists of all kinds, this has been a time of creativity, and it's just their way of coping.
Well, I don't know. I mean, some people are working. A lot of people are just really distressed, and it's hard to focus. Like a lot of my writer and artist friends. Um, I mean, we've been having the arts are having a rough time.
Yeah, that's to be sure. To be sure. Well, I have to tell you, we loved Crescendo. I know that it opened in Germany and it was going to have a broad release. We did show it in Chicago in March at our film festival on a big screen, and it is spectacular on the big screen.
Yeah,
And
it's been it's in God. The film has been released in China. It's been released in Taiwan. I think it's going to be released in Japan. They really love films about music. All over the Far East. It was out in theaters in Italy. Before it closed down again, like a month or two ago. It's been shown in 80 film festivals around the world.
and it's been very well received.
Yeah,
So I
generally.
hope, it's my hope that once we're back in movie theaters, that we can put it up again on
That would
the
be
big
great.
screen.
Yeah. Like my niece and nephew live in, where do they live? which town, what's the town where Northwestern is?
Oh, Evanston.
Evanston, yeah. They
Uh-huh.
live, yeah. No, they live in Lake Forest.
Oh, okay. North of Evanston.
Yeah.
Maybe they came and saw it when we showed it.
I think they saw it at a festival. I don't, they saw it at some film festival. Maybe it was yours. Yeah.
I hope so.
Mhm.
I hope so. And really, like I said, I'd like to put it back up on a big screen because I think
That would be
the
great.
photography is beautiful and the music, it swells. Like,
Yeah, you need to hear,
mhm,
you need to have
just
like good speakers and a good theater. I mean, to really hear the music.
right. And the music is really it adds so much to the film.
Mhm.
It's the it's the unspoken piece of the film.
Yeah.
You know, it's what keeps all the characters together. It's what brings the story together. So, yes, there's nothing like sitting in a dark movie theater with the sound and
Mm.
you know, it's I don't know, it's an intimate experience.
I'm looking at some of the questions.
Hmm.
They seem to be having a discussion among themselves.
So let's take a look. Um, yeah, Hillary says, uh, they were all wonderful. Does Mr. Glantz know David Brose's album East Jerusalem, West
No,
Jerusalem?
no,
You've never,
no, but I'll check it out for sure.
it's beautiful. The documentary of the album was shown at the film festival
Oh,
about 5 years ago. And, and, somebody wants to know where you get your ideas from. Are they from history, from dreams, um, the people that you meet, or stories that people tell you?
um, sometimes stories that people tell me. I love history. Um, and I like finding obscure things that happened in history and writing about them. And sometimes I'll just look at something and then get an idea. Like, oh, one of the other films I'm working on now it's about a well, she's a woman now, but she was a trafficked child in the Philippines. And she lives here, and we hang out at the same coffee shop, and she's an artist, and so I went to an opening and I saw her paintings, and I said, Jesus, there's got to be a story here. And I asked her, and so like she was like 5 years old, 7 years old, living on the streets in a city, and before she just got lucky and adopted by a missionary family. So we're doing that movie now. So you never know, I'm curious, I'm nosy.
Right, but we all, we talk to people and we meet people but we're not all inspired to write about it. So it's something in you.
I just don't want to have a grown-up job.
I understand that. But I think what you're doing is pretty grown up. Somebody has asked, I would have expected the Israeli musicians to have a more visceral and obvious reaction to the conductor telling the story about his parents. Can you comment on that? Um,
Actually, no. Like I don't like a lot of times reactions aren't visceral. Like you can't see them. They're sort of in the silence. So I mean, I'd have to take a look at the film again. Like I didn't feel that they didn't react. Um, oh, that's a good question, but I don't know how to answer the
I
question.
felt like they reacted to it, but they reacted to it based on their own reaction to one another. So um, I, I felt like they took it in.
Well, there's a great story about Omar Sharif in Dr. Zhivago. If you remember the scene where he's standing on the balcony and there are the people protesting, and then the Cossacks come in and slaughter everybody.
Yeah.
And when they did the shot, he was really up for it, and he felt he gave it his all and displayed a lot of emotion. And it was directed by David Lean, and David said, Omar, like tells a story, like I saw it on like the Johnny Carson show or something. And David Lean says, no, tone it down. So, they had like 300 horses, and to set up a shot like that is a lot of work. So they went through a lot of takes, and with David Lean telling him, tone it down, tone it down. And finally, David Lean turns to him and said, don't do anything. Stare ahead, look blankly. And Omar's going, well, what do you mean? My performance will be horrible. And David Lean said, no, it'll be great. You'll see it when I cut the scene together, how powerful your performance will be. And that's exactly what happened. Everybody talks to him about, oh my God, in that scene, you were incredible. So, a lot of how, the thing about film is that sometimes you never know how an emotion is going to play on screen. It's like I've been involved, we're shooting a film in Russia, and the actress Katrine Sass was unbelievable, and she'd won Best Actress in Germany for many of her parts, and we thought what she was doing on the set was brilliant. But when we saw the dailies, it was like, oh my God, she is just chewing the scenery. So it's hard to judge. And the other thing with a movie like this is that you don't get as many takes as you would like. So I don't know what was going on the set, what was happening on the set on that day. So,
Right.
I'm sorry you felt like they needed to be doing more.
Well, it's interesting because you're right. There is a conversation going on, and somebody said, well, but to them, he was the maestro. And do the sins of the father extend to the children and to their children?
Well, the idea is that, as long as you guys are asking questions and talking about it, like it was,
That's the
successful.
reason why you make movies, and that's the reason why
Yeah.
we show them,
Yeah.
so that we have these discussions. Absolutely. Well, if anybody has any final questions, please send them to me in the chat. Um, we showed To Life a couple of years ago.
Oh,
It's a
leaving, yeah,
wonderful film.
yeah.
And you wrote Clara's War.
Yeah.
And how did you come to write a novel? How did that
Well,
come up?
that was a crazy story. Like in doing the research for a lot of these Holocaust films, like you like to work with primary sources, which are basically letters and diaries. And
Right.
so, I kept coming across all these diaries from Jewish kids during the war. There were like 80, and each was like the diary of Anne Frank. And then I got curious about other kids, from different countries writing diaries. And then I started working with a couple of younger people like Melanie Challenger and Zlata Filipovich, who wrote Zlata's story, and she was called the Anne Frank of Sarajevo. And so we were putting together, I said, well, let's do some documentaries about, based on some of these diaries. And I convinced like a Holocaust museum in Rhode Island to send me to Europe to sort of collect these diaries. And then I finally went to Washington, D.C., to the Holocaust Museum there, and was looking for diaries. And I found this one called Clara's War, and I read it. And it was, mind blowing. And I said, give me her address. And they couldn't find her address anywhere. They're really horribly embarrassed. So I said, but they knew that she lived in northern Jersey. So I just started calling the federations in Northern Jewelry. It took me 5 minutes to track her down. And that's how I met Clara.
You tell powerful stories.
Well, Clara was great. She was amazing.
All right. Well, since it doesn't appear that there are any more questions coming into the chat, I want to thank you so much for
Oh, you're
joining us
welcome.
tonight. You know, it's one thing to watch the movie, and then it's another thing to hear the story behind the movie. And that's often as powerful as the movie itself. So thank you very much, Stephen, for joining us.
You're
And
welcome.
we're going to look for your upcoming movies.
Oh, yeah, please. And I hope to meet everybody at some future point in a real in-person festival.
That would be wonderful. We would really like that. Thank you, everybody, for
You're
joining
welcome.
us. Our,
Okay.
our festival actually ends tomorrow. So, but we've spent the last 19 days watching 23 films, and we hope that, everybody's, enjoyed, at least a movie or two. And will join us again in January when we're going to do a social justice film festival.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're going to show 6 films and invite teens to join us for free
Oh, perfect.
because,
Good idea.
it's something that social justice is something that teens are very much interested in.
Mhm.
And we're excited to be able to bring these kinds of films to them. So thank
Okay.
you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Mhm. Okay.
Good night.
Good night. Bye.